Imagine the ocean at night. It's quiet, endless, and a little unsettling. The waves move slowly, the stars shimmer faintly on the surface, and beneath that calm lies a darkness so deep that sunlight never reaches it. For thousands of years, humans have looked out at that dark horizon and wondered what could be lurking below. Long before submarines and sonar, people could only imagine what swam in the vast, cold waters. Whales surfaced like shadows, enormous and powerful. But even they sometimes carried scars, huge bite marks that seemed too big to belong to any living creature we know today. Sailors told stories, fishermen whispered tales, and eventually, scientists uncovered evidence that suggested these stories might not be entirely born from imagination. Somewhere in Earth's deep past, there lived a creature so massive, so dominant, that it has captured human curiosity to this very day. Its name is Megalodon. The word Megalodon means big tooth, and that alone gives you a hint of its legacy. Imagine a single tooth larger than your hand, triangular and sharp, like a weapon built for slicing through flesh and bone. These teeth have been found scattered across ocean floors, buried in cliffs, or hidden in layers of sediment that date back millions of years. People once thought they were dragon tongues turned to stone, or mysterious relics of ancient monsters. In a way, they weren't wrong. Megalodon was no dragon, but it was every bit as fearsome, a gigantic shark that ruled the seas long before humans ever walked the earth. Picture a shark so large it could easily make a great white shark look small. While modern great whites might reach around 6 meters in length, the Megalodon is believed to have grown as long as 18 meters, possibly more. That's like the size of a city bus moving silently through the water. Its jaw could open wide enough to swallow a human whole without much effort. Its bite was stronger than any known predators, capable of crushing bones with a single snap. For millions of years, this creature was the undisputed apex predator of the oceans. Nothing hunted it. Nothing challenged it. It lived during a time when ancient whales swam in warm seas, when the continents were still shifting, and when the oceans were full of life that would seem strange and unfamiliar to us now. But what makes the story of the Megalodon so fascinating is just its size. It ews the mystery that surrounds it. Unlike dinosaurs, whose bones are often preserved as fossils, sharks don't leave full skeletons behind. Their bodies are mostly made of cartilage, which doesn't fossilize well. What we do have are their teeth, thousands upon thousands of them found all over the world. These teeth tell us that Megalodon wasn't confined to a single corner of the ocean. It lived in seas across the planet, from warm coastal waters to deeper parts of the ancient oceans. Its presence was everywhere, yet almost nothing of its body remains. It's as if this massive predator slipped quietly out of existence, leaving only its teeth behind like breadcrumbs leading to a shadowy past. And that shadow is what keeps people curious. When you look at a Megalodon tooth up close, it's hard not to imagine the creature it once belonged to. You might think about what it looked like as it glided through the water, how its huge tail pushed it forward silently, how entire schools of prey would scatter at the first glimpse of its silhouette. There's something both awe-inspiring and chilling about it. It's not just another prehistoric animal. It's the ultimate predator of its time. The idea that something so powerful existed, dominated, and then vanished is both comforting and unnerving. Comforting because it's gone. Unnerving because we're left with so many questions. For centuries, the Megalodon existed only as a whisper in natural history. People would find the teeth and wonder what kind of beast could produce them. Before science gave us answers, myths filled the gaps. Some coastal communities believed these giant teeth were evidence of sea dragons. Others thought they were remnants of creatures that lived in the time of gods. Even today, the Megalodon has become a kind of cultural phantom. It appears in movies as a monster that might still be hiding in unexplored depths. Stories spread online about strange sonar readings or mysterious shadows caught on deep-sea cameras. There's something about the idea of a massive, ancient shark still roaming the oceans that captures our imagination in a way few other creatures do. Part of that intrigue comes from how little of our oceans we've actually explored. Scientists estimate that more than 80% of the ocean remains unmapped and unseen by human eyes. In that vast, black expanse, it's easy to imagine that something could be hiding. Realistically, there's no evidence that Megalodon survived today, but the legend persists because the creature itself was real, and it was incredible. Its existence is not fantasy. Its teeth are real. Its place in Earth's history is undeniable. That combination of fact and mystery makes it feel alive in our collective memory, even millions of years after it disappeared. When we talk about Megalodon, we're not just talking about a big shark. We're talking about a creature that shaped the ecosystems of its time. Its size and power influenced which animals survived and which didn't. It hunted whales, giant fish, and probably anything else that crossed its path. Its presence would have created ripples through the food chain, affecting everything from plankton blooms to the migrations of prey species. It wasn't just a part of the ocean. It was a force that shaped it. Imagine being a small marine animal in those ancient seas, swimming through clear blue waters only to feel a shift in the current, a subtle change that meant something enormous was approaching. Megalodon wouldn't have needed to chase frantically like modern sharks. Its sheer power and speed would have been enough to strike fast and disappear again into the depths. It was a creature built for dominance, and for millions of years, that's exactly what it did. As we begin this slow journey into the story of the Megalodon, think of it not as just a prehistoric monster, but as a real animal that lived, thrived, and eventually vanished. Its legend grew from the shadows of the deep, from fossils and fear, from science and imagination intertwining over centuries. And while we may never see one alive, its story remains. A reminder that Earth was once home to beings far beyond what we can encounter today. As you listen and drift deeper into this tale, imagine the calm surface of the ocean hiding a vast shape moving far below, unseen but powerful, a shadow in the deep. This is where the story of the Megalodon begins. Before there were cities, ships, or even humans, the Earth was already home to oceans full of life. The world that the Megalodon inherited was ancient and shifting, a place that would feel both familiar and alien to us. If you could travel back in time, millions of years before the first humans walked upright, you would find yourself standing on a coastline that looked nothing like today's beaches. The air would feel warmer, thicker in some places, and the continents were arranged differently. The oceans stretched wide and uninterrupted, teeming with creatures that have long vanished. It was in this world, far removed from our own, that the Megalodon's ancestors began their long journey toward becoming the kings of the sea. This period in Earth's history wasn't a single moment, but a vast stretch of time, spanning millions of years. The Megalodon lived during the Cenozoic era, specifically from around 23 to 3.6 million years ago, during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs. These were ages of transition. The dinosaurs had disappeared tens of millions of years earlier, after the great extinction event that reshaped life on Earth. In their absence, new creatures rose to fill the oceans, skies, and land. Mammals were flourishing, adapting to a world no longer dominated by giant reptiles. In the oceans, early whales swam freely, growing larger and more diverse with each passing era. These ancient seas were warm, productive, and full of opportunities for predators to grow strong. The continents during this time were slowly moving toward the positions we recognize today. North and South America were edging closer together, but the Isthmus of Panama had not yet fully formed. This meant that the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans were connected in ways they aren't now, allowing marine life to move more freely between them. The Indian Ocean and the Tethys Sea were changing as well, closing slowly as Africa pushed northward toward Europe. These shifts in land and sea created new coastlines, shallow seas, and deep basins, forming perfect habitats for large predators to thrive. The climate played a huge role, too. During much of the Miocene, the Earth was warmer than it is today. Tropical and subtropical waters extended far beyond their current boundaries. This warmth meant that plankton bloomed in abundance, feeding small fish, which fed larger fish, which in turn supported apex predators. The oceans were alive with layers of activity, from the tiniest organisms drifting near the surface to massive marine mammals cruising the depths. This was a world full of life, and in such a world, size and strength were enormous advantages. Before the Megalodon itself appeared, there were already large, powerful sharks in the ocean. Its ancestors belonged to a group called the Odontids, an ancient lineage of mackerel sharks that evolved after the extinction of the dinosaurs. Over millions of years, these sharks grew larger and more specialized, adapting to hunt the increasingly abundant marine mammals. One of these ancestors, Odontid obliquus, lived around 60 million years ago and already had impressively large teeth. From there, species evolved, each generation larger and more capable, until eventually, the Megalodon emerged as the ultimate form of this line, a super predator perfectly suited to dominate the seas of its time. It's strange to think that while all of this was happening, there were no humans, no civilizations, no witnesses to see these massive creatures in action. The world existed in a kind of quiet rhythm, shaped only by the movements of continents, the warming and cooling of the climate, and the relentless drive of evolution. Forests covered vast stretches of land, some filled with early primates, others with creatures we would barely recognize today. On the coasts, where shallow waters met warm sunlight, nurseries for marine life thrived. This was where young whales learned to swim, where fish gathered in schools so large they darkened the water, and where young sharks grew in relative safety before venturing into the open ocean. It was a world bustling with activity, but in a way that was entirely its own. The oceans of that era were also home to creatures that would seem almost mythical now. There were ancient whales that didn't look like the gentle giants we know today, but like fierce predators with sharp teeth. Basilosaurus, for example, was a long, serpentine whale that lived millions of years before Megalodon, and though it was gone by the time Megalodon ruled, it left behind a legacy of what large marine mammals could become. Other early whales were growing larger, evolving from land-dwelling ancestors into masters of the sea. These whales would eventually become both the prey and the competition of the Megalodon. Imagine the surface of those prehistoric waters on a warm afternoon. The sun beats down on a calm sea, and below the surface, shadows glide silently. Schools of fish scatter as massive shapes pass through, their movements smooth and unhurried. A pod of early whales surfaces, exhaling warm mist into the air. Far below them, deeper in the blue, a shape stirs, a young ancestor of Megalodon, not yet the giant it will become but already a skilled hunter. It's in these quiet moments that evolution unfolds, slowly, generation after generation, until a creature unlike any other takes its place at the top. This ancient world wasn't static. It changed constantly. Sea levels rose and fell, climates warmed and cooled, and species adapted or vanished. When Megalodon finally emerged, it entered a world ready for it. Warm, productive oceans gave it plenty to eat. Expanding populations of whales provided both food and a challenge. And the geographic layout of the seas allowed these sharks to roam widely, claiming vast territories as their hunting grounds. They weren't limited to one corner of the world. They were everywhere, from the coasts of what is now Europe and Africa to the ancient seas around the Americas and Asia. What makes this backdrop so fascinating is how it sets the stage for the legend of the Megalodon. It wasn't born into a desolate or empty ocean. It rose to power in a vibrant, competitive ecosystem. The creatures it hunted were strong and intelligent in their own ways. The oceans themselves were vast, warm highways connecting different corners of the earth. It was a time of abundance, and in abundance, giants often thrive. Thinking about this ancient world can feel strangely calming. It reminds us that Earth has always been changing, always full of life, even long before our species appeared. The Megalodon's story is deeply tied to the planet's shifting climate, moving continents, and evolving creatures. It wasn't just a giant shark appearing out of nowhere, it was the result of millions of years of quiet, persistent change beneath the waves. As you imagine these ancient oceans, let your mind drift like a current through time. Picture coastlines unfamiliar, waters warmer, skies free of airplanes and cities. Picture the ancestors of Megalodon moving silently through seas that stretched endlessly, waiting for the moment when their kind would rise to rule. This was the world long before us, a place where nature moved at its own pace, shaping giants in the depths. Long before the Megalodon became the ruler of the ancient seas, its story began in a slower, quieter way. Giants are not born overnight. They're shaped over millions of years, molded by changing oceans, shifting climates, and the endless push of evolution. To understand how Megalodon came to be, we need to imagine a long, unbroken chain of ancestors, each one adapting just a little better to its world until eventually a creature emerged that was unlike anything else alive at the time. The Megalodon's lineage goes back to a group of sharks called the Odontids. These were ancient mackerel sharks that first appeared after the extinction of the dinosaurs. When that mass extinction wiped out so many species, including the giant marine reptiles that once dominated the oceans, new opportunities opened up for other predators. Sharks, already survivors of multiple extinction events, began to evolve in new directions. Among them were the early Odontids, hunters that specialized in chasing and catching fast-moving prey in the warm, open seas. One of the earliest known members of this group was Ototus obliquus, which lived roughly 60 million years ago. It already had impressively large teeth, broad, triangular, and built for seizing large prey. Over time, new species evolved from this ancestor, each becoming slightly larger and more specialized. Eventually, a particularly powerful branch appeared, often referred to as the megatooth sharks. Their defining feature was their enormous, serrated teeth, perfect for slicing through the flesh and bones of marine mammals. As whales became more common and grew larger during the Miocene epoch, these sharks grew too, keeping pace with their prey in a slow but unstoppable evolutionary race. Imagine this like a gradual transformation happening over millions of years. One shark generation gives birth to another, and while the differences between them are almost invisible in the moment, across thousands and thousands of generations, those tiny changes add up. Larger individuals are better hunters. They survive longer, produce more offspring, and slowly, their traits become the norm. Teeth become broader and heavier. Bodies stretch longer, tails stronger, jaws more powerful. Bit by bit, the blueprint of the Megalodon begins to take shape in the oceans of deep time. The oceans themselves were the perfect nursery for this evolution. They were warm, full of food, and vast. Early whales and other marine mammals provided a rich source of energy. In such an environment, size was an advantage. Larger sharks could travel greater distances, hunt bigger prey, and dominate other predators. And so, over millions of years, the ancestors of Megalodon simply grew, and grew, and grew. It wasn't a sudden jump, but a slow, inevitable climb toward becoming the largest predatory shark the world has ever known. It's fascinating to think about what a young Megalodon might have been like during those ancient times. Like modern sharks, they probably began life smaller, vulnerable to other predators. They may have spent their early months in shallow, protected coastal nurseries where food was plentiful and danger was reduced. As they grew, they would venture further out into the open sea, slowly taking their place among the ocean's top hunters. Each individual followed a pattern shaped by countless generations before them, a silent instinct carried in their very structure. If you could watch this evolutionary story unfold like a time lapse, it would be mesmerizing. You'd see the shapes of sharks subtly changing, their teeth evolving from smooth-edged blades to saw-like serrations. You'd watch oceans rise and fall, climates warm and cool, continents shift slowly as these predators adapted with quiet persistence. It's not a story of sudden drama, but of slow, relentless progression, a perfect match for the patient rhythm of the sea itself. By the time Megalodon truly appeared, sometime around 23 million years ago, it was the pinnacle of this lineage. Its teeth were unmistakable, massive, triangular, and finely serrated. Its body was built for power, with a muscular tail that could propel it through the water at terrifying speeds for its size. While no complete skeleton has ever been found, scientists use modern sharks and the fossilized teeth to estimate its size. These estimates suggest that the largest individuals may have reached lengths of 18 meters, possibly more. To put that into perspective, that's about the length of 2 school buses parked end to end, or a modern humpback whale. Its jaws alone were extraordinary. Reconstructions show that Megalodon could open its mouth wide enough to engulf 2 adult humans standing side by side. The bite force has been estimated at over 180,000 newtons, far surpassing that of a great white shark and even modern crocodiles. Its teeth could easily crush bones and tear through thick blubber, making even the largest whales potential prey. This was a creature born not just to survive, but to dominate. And yet, even as it grew into this monstrous form, it was still part of a living, breathing world. It was born in warm coastal waters, swam through clear blue seas filled with life, and hunted creatures that were themselves extraordinary. Its story wasn't one of isolation, but of constant interaction with its environment, one shaped by food availability, competition, and the quiet march of geological time. When we think of Megalodon, it's easy to imagine it as a single, legendary animal, but in reality, it was a species, countless individuals living over millions of years. Some were enormous adults, patrolling the deep waters. Others were juveniles, learning to hunt in safer shallows. Generation after generation, they lived their lives unaware that one day their species would vanish, leaving only their teeth buried in sand and stone for us to find. What makes this origin story so compelling is how it mirrors the rhythm of the ocean itself. Slow, vast, and powerful. No single moment defines the birth of a giant. Instead, it's a collection of countless moments, each wave building upon the last, each shark a small step toward something greater. By the time the Megalodon fully emerged, it wasn't just another shark. It was the ultimate expression of millions of years of adaptation. If you let your mind drift as you picture this story, you can almost imagine standing on the shore of some ancient coastline, watching the blue horizon stretch endlessly. Far out at sea, a dark shape moves beneath the surface. It's not yet the Megalodon, but something close, something on its way. The ocean is preparing its greatest predator, slowly and patiently, the way it has always done. When people hear the word Megalodon, the first thing that comes to mind is its size. This was no ordinary shark. This was a creature so large that it pushes the boundaries of what we can easily picture in our minds. We talk about meters, tons, and bite forces, but those are just numbers. To really understand the scale of the Megalodon, we have to imagine it moving through the water, alive and powerful, in a way that statistics alone can't capture. Estimates suggest that adult megalodons commonly reached lengths between 15 and 18 meters, and some scientists believe that the largest individuals might have grown even bigger. That's roughly the length of 2 city buses parked end to end. It's about 3 times longer than a great white shark, which itself is considered enormous. Standing next to a great white can make any person feel tiny, but standing next to a megalodon, if that were even possible, would make you feel like a speck beside a moving submarine. Its body was thick, muscular, and built for strength, not the slender, sleek shape of some modern sharks. This was a heavyweight of the ocean, a predator that carried unimaginable power in every slow, deliberate movement. The jaws of the Megalodon were among its most impressive features. Imagine a mouth wide enough to fit two adults standing side by side easily. Its jaw span is estimated to have reached around 2.7 to 3.4 meters across. When it bit down, it delivered a force that scientists estimate could exceed 180,000 newtons. For comparison, a great white shark's bite reaches around 18,000 newtons, and those teeth are what truly capture people's imagination. They are thick, triangular, and perfectly serrated, like knives designed to cut through flesh and bone without effort. Each tooth could weigh more than half a pound. Unlike most bones, which decay over time, shark teeth are made of hard, durable material and fall out regularly throughout a shark's life. A single Megalodon may have gone through tens of thousands of teeth in its lifetime, which is why so many have been found across the world. Holding one of those teeth today feels like holding a piece of deep time itself, a direct connection to a creature that once ruled the seas. But the size of the Megalodon wasn't just about its teeth and jaws. Its entire body was built on a scale that's hard to fully grasp. Scientists think its torso was thick and powerful, with massive muscles driving a large, crescent-shaped tail fin. This tail allowed it to propel itself through the water with surprising speed despite its bulk. It didn't need to dart around like smaller predators. Its sheer size meant it could rely on bursts of power to ambush prey, attacking with overwhelming force before its target had any chance to react. Its fins were proportionally larger than any modern shark's, helping it steer its enormous body through the open oceans with surprising grace. To picture it properly, imagine yourself floating in calm, blue water. The surface is warm, the sun shines overhead, and you can see a few meters down into the clear depths. Then, slowly, a shadow begins to form below you. It starts as a dark patch, growing larger and larger until you realize it's not the sea floor. It is a living creature rising toward you. The outline stretches longer than a bus. The head is wide and blunt, and the tail moves slowly with deliberate power. Even without rushing, it closes the distance effortlessly. That shadow belongs to Megalodon, and in its world, everything else would have seemed small. Size gave the Megalodon huge advantages in the ancient oceans. Larger animals lose heat more slowly, allowing them to maintain a stable body temperature and move into different waters without struggle. A massive body also meant greater endurance. Megalodon could roam vast stretches of ocean in search of food, migrating between warm and temperate waters depending on the season. Its size allowed it to tackle prey that no other shark could dream of: large whales, seals, and other marine mammals. In a world filled with enormous creatures, being the biggest predator was the ultimate trump card. And yet, despite its size, the Megalodon wasn't clumsy or sluggish. Its powerful tail and streamlined shape allowed it to move surprisingly fast. It's believed that it hunted using ambush tactics, striking its prey from below or behind in sudden bursts of speed. Fossil evidence from whale bones shows bite marks that match the shape and size of Megalodon teeth. Some of these bones even show signs of healing, meaning the whales survived the initial attack. This tells us something fascinating. Megalodon wasn't just mindlessly attacking, it was strategic, aiming for vulnerable spots like flippers and tails to disable its prey before delivering the killing blow. Its size wasn't just for show, it was paired with intelligence and precision. The oceans it swam in were vast, but not empty. There were ancient whales, some with sharp teeth, others beginning to resemble the baleen whales we know today. There were schools of fish, seals, turtles, and other sharks, yet none of them came close to matching the sheer size of Megalodon. It was the undisputed ruler of its domain. Its presence alone must have shaped the behavior of other animals. Pods of whales likely altered their migration patterns to avoid hunting grounds where these sharks prowled. Smaller predators may have followed in its wake, scavenging leftovers from its massive kills. Wherever Megalodon went, it commanded the ecosystem. What As remarkable is how much we can infer about its size and power from so little physical evidence. Because sharks have skeletons made mostly of cartilage, which doesn't fossilize well, there are no complete Megalodon skeletons. Everything we know comes from teeth, vertebrae, and comparisons to modern sharks, like the great white. And yet, from those fragments, a picture emerges of a creature so immense that it feels almost mythic. It's no wonder that stories and legends have grown around it, blending fact and imagination. If you think about it quietly, it's almost poetic. A creature that once filled the oceans with its presence has disappeared completely, leaving behind only pieces of itself for us to discover millions of years later. Those pieces are enough to tell us that once, there was something in the water far bigger than anything alive today. Something that swam where whales now swim, that hunted where we sail ships, that ruled an ancient world with silent strength. As you let this image settle in your mind, imagine the slow, steady movement of a giant beneath the waves. Picture its size, not as a number, but as a presence, vast, calm, and powerful. The ocean has always been a place where scale can overwhelm us, where we realize how small we truly are. Megalodon embodied that feeling in life. It was size beyond imagination, moving quietly through blue waters that belonged entirely to it. If there's one thing that keeps the legend of the Megalodon alive, it's the teeth. Long after their bodies vanished, their teeth remained, buried in layers of sand, rock, and seafloor sediments around the world. These teeth are not small curiosities you can hold between your fingers. They are massive, heavy, and perfectly shaped for one purpose: to bite through flesh and bone like they were nothing. When people first discovered them centuries ago, they didn't think they belonged to sharks at all. To many, they looked like petrified tongues of dragons or strange stones that had fallen from the heavens. Only later did scientists realize they were the teeth of a creature unlike any living shark today. A single Megalodon tooth can measure over 18 centimeters long, about the size of an adult human hand. It's wide at the base, tapering to a sharp triangular point, with finely serrated edges like the blade of a perfectly crafted knife. These serrations weren't random. They were evolution's answer to tearing through thick layers of blubber and bone. While some modern sharks have smooth-edged teeth for gripping slippery fish, Megalodon's teeth were designed for cutting. Imagine a mouth filled with around 250 of these massive, serrated blades arranged in multiple rows. When one tooth fell out, as shark teeth often do, another would move forward to replace it, like a conveyor belt of weapons. Sharks constantly shed and replace their teeth throughout their lives. A single great white shark might go through thousands of teeth. The Megalodon, being much larger, likely went through tens of thousands. Every time a tooth fell, it would sink to the sea floor. Some were buried in soft sediments and preserved for millions of years. That's why Megalodon teeth are found all over the world, from North America to Europe, Africa, Asia, and even Australia. Their widespread presence tells us something remarkable. Megalodons didn't just live in one part of the ocean. They ruled almost everywhere, traveling vast distances through warm seas that connected the world in ways that don't exist anymore. When you hold a fossilized Megalodon tooth today, it feels almost like holding time itself. The edges may be dulled by age, but the shape is unmistakable. Many are perfectly preserved, their enamel smooth and their serrations still visible under light. Some have mineral stains in shades of brown, black, or even bluish-gray, depending on the sediments they were buried in. Fossil hunters often find them on beaches after storms or by carefully searching riverbeds and cliffs. Each tooth carries a quiet story of a creature that once swam in places we now walk. The sheer number of teeth found gives scientists incredible insight into the lives of these sharks. For example, smaller teeth are often found in coastal areas, suggesting these were nursery zones where young megalodons spent their early years, away from the dangers of the open sea. Larger teeth are often discovered in deeper or more open water sediments. hinting at where adult megalodons hunted and traveled. Just from these teeth, scientists have been able to reconstruct migration patterns, growth stages, and even aspects of their behavior. The structure of the teeth also tells us about their prey. Unlike the long, narrow teeth of sharks that eat mostly fish, Megalodon's teeth were broad and strong, perfect for tackling large marine mammals. Some fossilized whale bones show deep, clean bite marks that match the size and shape of Megalodon teeth almost perfectly. In some cases, the bite marks are so clear that you can imagine the moment it happened. A sudden ambush from below, the shark's jaws closing around the whale's flank with bone-crushing force, teeth slicing through blubber and ribs in a single movement. These marks are like signatures left behind by the ancient predator. Another fascinating detail is how the teeth give us clues about its growth. Juvenile megalodons had smaller, thinner teeth, adapted for hunting fish and smaller prey. As they grew, their teeth became wider, heavier, and more serrated, signaling a shift to hunting whales and other large animals. This gradual change shows how their diet and behavior evolved as they matured. It's almost like reading a biography of a creature through its teeth alone. People have been captivated by these fossils for centuries. Long before modern paleontology existed, ancient civilizations found them and wove them into legends. In medieval Europe, they were thought to be tongue stones from dragons or mythical beasts. In parts of Asia, they were believed to have protective powers and were sometimes worn as amulets. Even today, megalodon teeth are highly sought after by collectors. Some are polished and displayed as natural treasures, others are studied in laboratories to uncover more secrets about these ancient sharks. The teeth also offer a strange comfort. They are the only part of the megalodon that remains in abundance. Unlike bones, which rarely fossilize well in sharks because their skeletons are made of cartilage, teeth survive the test of time. So, while their massive bodies vanished without leaving much behind, their teeth endure, scattered across the globe like silent witnesses. Each one is a reminder that, not so long ago in the grand timeline of Earth, a giant shark swam in the very waters we know today. If you imagine drifting slowly through a shallow prehistoric sea, you might picture these teeth gleaming faintly on the sandy bottom after a shark shed one. Over time, layers of sediment would cover it, preserving it as the world above changed completely. Oceans cooling, continents shifting, species rising and disappearing. Millions of years later, a storm uncovers it, and it washes up on a beach, to be picked up by curious hands who have no idea what kind of creature once carried it. There's something peaceful about that thought. The megalodon itself is gone, but its teeth tell its story patiently, waiting for us to find them. They are not loud relics. They are quiet, enduring fragments of a world that existed long before us. And through them, we can still catch a glimpse of a time when the ocean's greatest hunter moved silently beneath the waves, leaving only its teeth behind. As you think about those teeth, imagine holding one in your hand. Feel its weight. Picture the jaw it came from, lined with hundreds more just like it. Imagine the dark, open sea millions of years ago, and somewhere in the depths, a massive shape moving slowly, its mouth filled with teeth like no other. The megalodon wasn't just enormous, it was built to hunt. Every part of its body, from its teeth to its tail, worked together to make it the ultimate predator of its time. If you imagine the ancient oceans millions of years ago, they weren't quiet, empty blue deserts. They were full of life. Pods of whales moved through warm waters, schools of fish glittered near the surface, and other sharks patrolled their own hunting grounds. But in that vast, busy world, Megalodon sat at the very top. It had no natural enemies. It didn't need to hide. It didn't need to rush. It hunted on its own terms, with confidence that came from size, strength, and strategy. One of the most important advantages Megalodon had was its ability to control its body temperature. Like some modern sharks, scientists believe it was partly warm-blooded, which allowed it to maintain a higher body temperature than the surrounding water. This gave it more power and stamina, letting it swim faster and farther than cold-blooded animals. It could enter cooler waters without losing energy, following prey across wide stretches of ocean. This ability meant it wasn't limited to tropical areas. It could travel into temperate seas, expanding its hunting grounds far beyond what other predators could manage. Its hunting style was different from what we might imagine when we think of sharks. Modern great white sharks, for example, rely on ambush tactics. They rush from below, strike fast, and retreat, letting their prey bleed out. Megalodon, with its immense size and power, didn't need to rely only on speed. It could overwhelm its prey through sheer force. Fossil evidence tells us that Megalodon often targeted the most vulnerable parts of large whales, the flippers and tail. By biting these areas, it could disable the animal, preventing it from escaping. Once the prey was immobilized, the shark could return again and again until the hunt was over. This strategy wasn't just about brute strength. It showed intelligence and precision. Imagine being in the ocean millions of years ago, watching from afar as a small pod of early whales moves slowly through the water. The sunlight filters down in golden beams, and everything seems peaceful. Then, from below, a massive shadow rises. It doesn't rush. It approaches steadily, the water swirling gently around its powerful tail. The whales may sense something. Their movements quicken, but it's too late. In a single calculated motion, the Megalodon strikes, its jaws closing on a whale's tail with a crunch that echoes through the water. The whale thrashes, but the damage is done. The shark circles back, calm and unstoppable, while smaller fish scatter in every direction. This was how the perfect hunter moved, without hesitation, without waste. Its enormous jaws and teeth gave it another advantage. It could take down prey that other predators couldn't even attempt to tackle. Large whales were not just targets, they were essential food sources. A single whale carcass could feed a megalodon for days, maybe weeks. And in ancient oceans, whales were abundant. As different species of early whales evolved, they offered a variety of prey sizes and behaviors. Some were fast swimmers, others were slower, filter-feeding giants. Megalodon adapted to this range, adjusting its hunting strategy depending on the target. Its sense of smell was likely extraordinary. Like modern sharks, it could probably detect tiny amounts of blood in the water from kilometers away. Combined with keen vision and sensitivity to vibrations through special organs, it could locate wounded or struggling animals long before other scavengers arrived. It wasn't just a brute force killer, it was a patient stalker, capable of sensing opportunities from far away and arriving like a silent storm. Another part of what made Megalodon such a perfect hunter was its mobility. Its powerful, crescent-shaped tail gave it bursts of speed, allowing it to close the gap with fast-moving prey. It might not have been able to sustain high speeds for long, but it didn't need to. A single burst at the right moment was enough. Its large pectoral fins acted like wings, giving it stability and control as it maneuvered through the water. For a creature of such size, it moved with surprising grace. Scientists believe that megalodons may have followed seasonal migrations of whales, just as some modern sharks follow their prey today. Whales would travel to warmer waters to give birth, creating predictable gatherings of vulnerable young. These calving grounds could have been prime hunting territories for adult megalodons. The young whales, though large by modern standards, were easy targets compared to fully grown adults. By timing their movements with those of their prey, megalodons ensured a steady food supply throughout the year. It's also likely that megalodons used different hunting strategies depending on their age. Juveniles, which were still large compared to most sharks, may have stayed in shallow protected coastal areas, hunting smaller fish and avoiding larger threats. Adults, meanwhile, roamed the open ocean, taking down massive prey. This division of territory and behavior reduced competition between young and adult sharks, allowing the species to thrive in different ecological niches. Their dominance in the ocean must have shaped the behavior of other animals. Whales likely developed strategies to avoid areas where megalodons were known to hunt. Perhaps they traveled in larger pods for protection, or altered their routes to reduce encounters. Other predators may have followed in the wake of a megalodon's kill, scavenging on leftovers. In this way, megalodons didn't just hunt, they shaped entire ecosystems around their presence. What's truly fascinating is that everything about this predator evolved for efficiency. Its teeth were designed to cut, its jaws were built to crush, its tail provided bursts of speed, its senses let it detect prey from vast distances, its warm-blooded abilities gave it endurance. Every feature complemented the others, creating a creature that didn't just survive in its environment, it ruled it completely. There was no rival that matched its combination of size, power, and adaptability. For millions of years, Megalodon hunted freely, a living embodiment of evolutionary perfection in the sea. If you close your eyes and imagine drifting through those ancient waters, it's not hard to feel the quiet tension beneath the surface. The sea is calm, but somewhere out there, beyond sight, a giant is moving slowly, sensing, waiting. It doesn't need to rush. It doesn't need to struggle. The ocean belongs to it, and everything else knows it. This is what it meant to be the perfect hunter in a world that was both abundant and unforgiving. When people imagine the Megalodon, the first thing that usually comes to mind is its enormous mouth filled with giant, razor-sharp teeth. So, naturally, one of the biggest questions is, what on earth did a creature that size eat? The answer is simple but fascinating. It ate a lot, and its menu was as grand as its size. Unlike smaller sharks that lived on fish and squid, the Megalodon targeted some of the biggest animals in the prehistoric oceans. Its diet shaped its role as a true apex predator. The most important part of its diet was whales. But not just any whales. Early forms of baleen whales and toothed whales that roamed the oceans millions of years ago. These whales weren't exactly like the ones we know today. Some were smaller, some were massive, and many species were still evolving. For Megalodon, they were perfect prey. Fossilized whale bones have been found with deep, clean bite marks that match the size and shape of Megalodon teeth. Some bones even show evidence of repeated bites, as if the shark attacked in stages, first crippling its prey, then returning to feed. These bite marks are like ancient fingerprints, proof of the shark's dining habits. What's even more intriguing is where those bite marks are usually found, around the flippers, tails, and sometimes the chest area. By attacking these spots, Megalodon could disable whales, preventing them from swimming away. This was a smart and efficient strategy. Once the whale couldn't move, the shark could feed at its own pace, sometimes returning over hours or even days to finish the meal. A single large whale could provide enough food to sustain one giant shark for weeks. In a way, whales were like floating buffets in the ancient oceans, and Megalodon was always ready for the feast. But whales weren't the only things on the menu. Megalodon also ate large fish, other marine mammals, and possibly even smaller sharks. It wasn't picky when it came to opportunities. If something was big, meaty, and swimming in its territory, it was fair game. There's evidence to suggest that Megalodon may have even engaged in cannibalism, particularly among juveniles in nursery areas. Some shark species today, like sand tiger sharks, are known for this behavior. It's possible that young megalodons competing for limited resources in shallow coastal areas occasionally preyed on each other. It sounds brutal, but in the natural world, survival often comes before anything else. Scientists believe Megalodon's diet played a huge role in shaping the ocean's ecosystems. Because it preyed so heavily on whales, it likely influenced whale populations and their migration patterns. Whales may have avoided certain regions during calving seasons because of the presence of these giant sharks. This predator-prey relationship would have created a dynamic balance in the ocean. When whale populations thrived, so did Megalodon. But if whale numbers dropped, it could have ripple effects through the entire ecosystem, affecting not just the sharks but scavengers and other marine creatures as well. One interesting piece of evidence comes from fossilized whale ear bones found in ancient coastal regions. These bones show bite marks and breakage patterns consistent with Megalodon attacks, suggesting that the shark sometimes targeted the head. Crushing the skull or ear bones could disorient or instantly kill the whale, making it easier to finish the hunt. Considering the sheer power of a Megalodon AS bite, estimated to be stronger than that of any creature that has ever lived, it could easily crush bone and tear through thick flesh in a single chomp. Another part of their diet may have included scavenging. Just because Megalodon was the top predator didn't mean it ignored easy meals. If a whale died naturally or was killed by something else, Megalodon would have detected the scent of decay from kilometers away. A carcass drifting through the water would have attracted all kinds of scavengers, but when Megalodon showed up, everyone else cleared out. It could consume massive amounts of meat quickly, tearing chunks away until little was left but bones. This ability to switch between active hunting and scavenging made it incredibly adaptable, which is part of why it dominated the oceans for millions of years. Imagine the prehistoric sea for a moment. A massive whale, weakened by age or illness, drifts slowly through warm waters. Its breathing is heavy, its movements sluggish. Far away, a faint trace of its scent spreads through the current like a silent signal. The Megalodon picks it up and begins its approach, not in a frantic rush, but with a steady, confident rhythm. Its shadow grows larger as it nears. Smaller sharks that had begun to circle scatter instantly. The giant arrives, bites deep, and claims the carcass with an authority that no other creature can challenge. This wasn't just a hunter. It was a ruler of a vast underwater world. It's also worth thinking about how much a creature like this needed to eat. Estimates suggest that a Megalodon might have consumed hundreds of pounds of meat in a single day, depending on its size. Its metabolism was likely higher than that of modern cold-blooded sharks, which means it needed more energy to sustain itself. Hunting large prey like whales wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. Smaller fish or seals wouldn't have provided nearly enough energy to keep a giant like that alive. It needed the richest, densest sources of calories the ocean could offer. Interestingly, Megalodon's diet gives us clues about why it eventually went extinct. As climate patterns shifted and whale populations changed their migration routes, the shark's primary food sources became less accessible. Cooler waters and new species of whales emerged, many of which could swim faster or lived in regions where Megalodon couldn't easily follow. Over time, this changing menu may have played a major role in its decline. A predator that depends on massive prey can be incredibly successful, but also vulnerable when the environment shifts. The image of Megalodon feeding is both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It reminds us how different the oceans once were. These weren't quiet blue spaces. They were living, breathing ecosystems filled with creatures of unimaginable size. And at the heart of it all was a shark that ate like a king. Its meals shaped the world around it, influenced migrations, and left fossil evidence we can still read millions of years later. Each bite mark, each broken bone, tells a story about what it meant to live and die in the age of giants. If you drift quietly through your imagination, you can almost picture it. A vast blue ocean, a distant splash, a massive shadow gliding below. A moment later, a burst of movement, a flash of white, and the water turns still again. The hunt is over. The feast begins, and somewhere in that endless sea, the Megalodon continues its silent, unstoppable search for the next meal. When we imagine Megalodon, it's easy to picture it lurking in deep, dark parts of the ocean, like some ancient sea monster hiding where no light reaches. But in reality, Megalodon didn't just stick to one kind of environment. It roamed across vast stretches of the prehistoric seas, from warm coastal shallows to the wide open oceans. Its size and abilities allowed it to live almost anywhere it could find food, and the fossil record gives us surprising clues about just how widespread this giant predator was. Fossils of Megalodon teeth have been found on almost every continent, from North and South America to Europe, Africa, Asia, and even parts of Australia. That alone tells us that Megalodon wasn't limited to a single region. It was a global traveler. It swam through the ancient oceans during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, between about 23 million and 3.6 million years ago. At that time, Earth's climate was warmer than it is today, and the sea levels were higher. This created vast, shallow seas that stretched across continents, connecting areas that are now separated by land. For a creature like Megalodon, these warm, connected waters were perfect hunting grounds. It preferred warmer waters, thriving especially in tropical and subtropical seas. This makes sense when you think about its prey. Many species of early whales, seals, and other marine mammals gathered in these warm waters to give birth and feed. Megalodon would follow these migrations, appearing in certain regions seasonally like a silent, terrifying guest. Warm coastal areas provided not only abundant food but also nursery zones, where young megalodons could grow in relatively protected environments. Fossils of smaller juvenile teeth have been discovered in these shallow coastal zones, suggesting that these areas were like shark nurseries, places where the young could hunt smaller prey and avoid larger threats until they grew big enough to venture into the open ocean. But Megalodon wasn't limited to coastal regions. It also swam into deeper waters, traveling between continents just like whales do today. Its ability to regulate its body temperature allowed it to explore cooler regions and follow prey migrations over great distances. Some scientists think that Megalodon may have used ocean currents in much the same way as modern sharks and whales, letting the water carry it effortlessly across thousands of kilometers. Picture a massive shark gliding through the open ocean, moving steadily day after day, crossing vast blue expanses without a single obstacle in sight. There were no ships, no pollution, no human noise, just the deep rhythm of the prehistoric sea. In some places, Megalodon fossils are found far inland, nowhere near modern coastlines. At first, this confused early researchers, but the explanation is simple. Millions of years ago, those regions were underwater. Shallow seas covered parts of modern-day North America and Europe, and as the climate and sea levels changed over time, these areas eventually dried out, leaving behind a silent record of the ocean's former rulers buried in the ground. People have found megalodon teeth in places like riverbeds, cliffs, and quarries, often miles away from any beach. Holding one of those teeth in your hand today is like touching a piece of a vanished world. One particularly fascinating aspect of Megalodon's habitat is how adaptable it was. Juveniles seem to prefer shallow, protected coastal waters, almost like giant toddlers staying close to home, while adults roamed the open ocean, sometimes returning to coastal areas to hunt whales that migrated near shore. This division of habitat helped the species thrive because it reduced competition between the young and the adults. The smaller sharks could grow and feed without being overshadowed by the giants, while the adults had the entire ocean to rule. Imagine the coastline millions of years ago. There are no cities, no harbors, no boats. Instead, there are wide stretches of calm, warm water filled with schools of fish, seabirds diving, and groups of early whales swimming lazily. In the distance, a shadow glides beneath the surface, massive, slow, confident. It moves closer to shore, drawn by the scent of whales calving in the shallows. The presence of this predator turns the peaceful coastline into a place of silent tension. Even though it can't be seen from above, every creature seems to sense that something powerful is nearby. Meanwhile, far out in the open ocean, another megalodon follows a different route. It swims steadily along a warm current, moving from one continent to another. The water here is deep and endless. The sun's light fades after a few dozen meters, leaving a world of dark blue stillness. In that vastness, the shark moves like a living submarine, built perfectly for travel. It doesn't need a map or a compass. It relies on ancient instincts, sensing temperature gradients and vibrations to guide it toward areas rich with prey. This incredible range of habitats gave Megalodon a major advantage over other predators. It wasn't tied to one type of food or one place. If whale populations shifted, it could follow. If the climate changed gradually, it could adapt by exploring new regions. It was a flexible, wide-ranging predator in an ocean that was far more open and interconnected than it is today. But this wide distribution also gives us hints about its eventual downfall. As the Earth's climate cooled during the late Pliocene, ocean temperatures dropped. Whales began migrating to colder regions where Megalodon may not have been able to follow effectively. Its warm water preferences meant that its ideal hunting grounds were shrinking. Shallow seas dried up as sea levels fell, reducing nursery areas for young sharks. Gradually, the vast network of warm waters that Megalodon depended on began to change, and with it, the balance of its world shifted. Still, during its prime, Megalodon ruled nearly every warm sea on the planet. From the coasts of ancient North America to the shores of Africa and across the prehistoric Pacific, it was there, gliding through waters where today we build ports and cities. It's strange to think that where we now swim, surf, or fish, there were once sharks longer than school buses silently patrolling the waves. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing on a quiet, prehistoric beach. There are no footprints but your own. The sky is a soft golden orange as the sun sets. The waves roll gently onto the shore. Just beyond the shallow breakers, something stirs the water. A massive dorsal fin cutting slowly through the surface before disappearing again. You can't see the creature fully, but you know it's there. Somewhere in those warm, ancient waters, the Megalodon is on the move, part of a vast, living world that no longer exists. One of the most fascinating things about Megalodon is not just how big it was as an adult, but how it got that way. Growing into one of the largest predators to ever exist wasn't something that happened overnight. From birth to full size, the life of a Megalodon was a long journey of steady growth, survival, and constant feeding. Scientists have pieced together this life story not through complete skeletons, they don't exist, but through teeth, vertebrae, and comparisons with modern sharks. And what they've discovered paints a picture of a creature whose life cycle was as impressive as its size. Megalodon babies were already enormous the moment they entered the world. Fossil evidence suggests that newborns were likely between 6 to 10 feet long, that roughly the size of a grown great white shark today. Imagine that for a moment. A baby shark the length of a small car, already born a predator. Unlike many fish that lay thousands of eggs, Megalodon, like other large sharks, likely gave birth to live young. Inside the mother, the developing embryos probably fed on unfertilized eggs, and possibly on weaker siblings as well, a behavior known as intrauterine cannibalism. This might sound shocking, but it's actually common in some modern shark species. It ensured that only the strongest pups survived to be born, giving them a better chance at survival in a dangerous ocean. Once born, young Megalodon stayed close to shallow coastal areas, where the waters were warmer and there were fewer threats. These areas acted as nurseries, providing plenty of smaller prey like fish, rays, and small marine mammals to feed on. Fossilized juvenile teeth found in these ancient nursery grounds tell us that young sharks spent years growing in these relatively safe zones before venturing into deeper waters. They weren't invincible, of course. Other predators, including larger megalodons, could still be a threat, but staying in the shallows gave them their best shot at survival. Growth for Megalodon was likely steady and significant. Based on growth rings found in fossilized vertebrae, similar to the rings in a tree trunk, scientists estimate that Megalodons grew several inches each year. Over decades, this steady growth transformed them from car-sized juveniles into bus-sized adults. A fully grown Megalodon could reach lengths of 50 to possibly over 60 feet. Imagine watching one grow through the years, each stage making it a little more dominant in the ocean. As it grew, its diet shifted too. A young Megalodon might focus on smaller, easier prey, but as it got larger, it started to hunt bigger animals, eventually joining the ranks of the top predators targeting whales. The teenage years of a megalodon, if we can call them that, were likely a critical time. This was when they would begin to leave the nursery grounds and venture into open waters, testing their hunting skills against faster and larger prey. It was a time of both opportunity and risk. The open ocean offered more food, but also exposed them to challenges. They had to adapt to new hunting strategies and learn to use their size and strength effectively. In a way, each megalodon's journey was like a slow, natural training process, growing, learning, and becoming more efficient with every year. Megalodons probably reached maturity somewhere between 25 and 40 years of age. This might sound old, but for such a massive animal, it makes sense. Large creatures tend to have longer lifespans and slower growth rates compared to smaller ones. Some scientists believe megalodons could live as long as 60 or even 70 years. Throughout their lives, their teeth were constantly replaced. Like modern sharks, they had multiple rows of teeth, and when one fell out, another would move forward. Over the course of a lifetime, a single megalodon might lose and replace thousands of teeth. That's why fossilized megalodon teeth are found so frequently. They shed them like we lose hair. Each stage of growth also meant changes in their role in the ecosystem. As juveniles, they were skilled hunters in shallower waters, helping control populations of medium-sized marine animals. As adults, they became the undisputed apex predators of the open ocean. Their growing size allowed them to take down prey that no other predator could challenge. The transition from a young hunter to a fully mature megalodon marked their complete domination of the seas. What's truly remarkable is how these ancient sharks managed to grow so large in the first place. Part of the answer lies in the abundance of food during their time. The Miocene and Pliocene seas were filled with whales and other marine mammals, providing endless opportunities for feeding. The warm climate also meant their metabolic rates were higher, encouraging steady growth. Evolution favored individuals that could grow larger, hunt more effectively, and travel farther. Over millions of years, this led to the giants we know from the fossil record. Imagine watching a young megalodon in its nursery waters. The sunlight shines down through the shallow sea, making the water look almost golden. Schools of fish scatter as the young shark passes, already dwarfing most other creatures around it. As months turn into years, it grows longer, broader, more powerful. Its movements become more deliberate, its hunts more precise. One day, it leaves the nursery behind and swims out into the deeper blue, following instinct into a world where only the strongest survive. As it grows into adulthood, its presence alone changes the rhythm of the ocean. Smaller predators give way. Whales grow cautious. Even scavengers follow in its wake, waiting for leftovers. This is how a single creature, starting life as a giant baby, can eventually shape entire ecosystems simply by existing. The story of Megalodon-ES growth is also a reminder of how little we actually know about these ancient creatures. Because cartilage doesn't fossilize well, we have only teeth and a few vertebrae to go on. From these fragments, scientists have built careful, detailed theories. Every tooth is a clue. Every growth ring in a vertebra is a page in its life story. And while we may never see a living megalodon, these clues allow us to imagine its journey from birth to dominance. Close your eyes and picture it. A warm, prehistoric coastline. Waves gently rolling in. In the shallows, a massive newborn shark glides effortlessly, unaware of the legacy it will one day carry. Far out at sea, adult giants patrol the deep. One day, this young shark will join them. It will grow, hunt, travel, and rule the oceans for decades. This is how legends are born. Not all at once, but slowly, year after year, in the silent rhythm of the ancient sea. If there's one thing that makes Megalodon instantly recognizable, it's the teeth. Massive, triangular, and serrated like saw blades, they're the fossils that have captured imaginations for centuries. People have found them on beaches, in riverbeds, and embedded in cliffs, some as large as a human hand. Long before scientists knew what Megalodon was, these teeth were already objects of wonder. Ancient people once thought they were the tongues of dragons or petrified lightning bolts. It wasn't until much later that the truth came to light. These belonged to the largest shark that ever lived, and those teeth were the key to its power. Each Megalodon tooth could reach over 7 inches in length. To put that in perspective, a great white shark's teeth are usually about 2 to 3 inches long. The difference is enormous, not just in size but also in design. Megalodon teeth were thick and strong, with finely serrated edges designed to slice through flesh and bone. Their triangular shape made them perfect for biting off huge chunks of meat. When you hold one in your hand, it's easy to imagine the incredible force behind it. These weren't delicate tools. They were natural weapons honed by millions of years of evolution. The structure of these teeth reveals a lot about how Megalodon fed. Unlike some sharks that swallow prey whole, Megalodon was a bite-and-rip feeder. It would bite into its prey with incredible power, then pull back, tearing away large sections of flesh. The serrated edges acted like a row of tiny knives, sawing through skin, muscle, and even bone. Some fossilized whale bones show clean, curved bite marks that fit perfectly with the shape of Megalodon teeth, like puzzle pieces from an ancient attack. These bite marks give us a glimpse into how brutal and efficient their feeding behavior was. But teeth alone weren't the whole story. Behind those teeth was a jaw unlike anything the world has ever seen. Estimates suggest that Megalodon's jaws could open wide enough to swallow 2 adult humans standing side by side. Imagine a mouth over 9 feet across, lined with 5 rows of teeth. Altogether, a single Megalodon could have had over 250 teeth at once, constantly being replaced as old ones fell out. Like modern sharks, their teeth were arranged in conveyor belt fashion. When one tooth was lost, another rotated forward to take its place. Over a lifetime, a single Megalodon might have produced tens of thousands of teeth. Then there's the bite force. Scientists estimate that Megalodon's bite could generate between 24,000 and 40,000 pounds of force per square inch. For comparison, a great white shark's bite force is around 4,000 psi, and a lion's is about 650 psi. That means Megalodon's bite was several times more powerful than any animal alive today. It could crush whale bones with ease, snapping through rib cages and skulls like they were nothing. If a Megalodon bit into a whale's spine, the result would have been catastrophic for the prey. Instant immobilization, followed by a swift, efficient feeding. The placement of bite marks on fossils also tells us something fascinating. Megalodon didn't just randomly attack. It targeted specific areas to disable prey quickly. Flippers and tails were common strike zones because damaging them would stop the prey from escaping. Skull and chest bites were also frequent, likely to kill or incapacitate instantly. This combination of precision and raw power shows just how specialized Megalodon was as a hunter. It wasn't a reckless biter, it was a calculated killer, using its teeth and jaws strategically. Megalodon teeth are also a big reason why we know so much about the species. Because shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, they rarely fossilize well. But teeth are made of hard dentin and enamel, so they last for millions of years. These teeth are found all over the world, and each one tells part of the story. Some are worn down, showing the life of an older shark. Others are pristine, belonging to younger individuals. Their size, shape, and location help scientists estimate the size of the shark they came from, the age, and even where it might have lived. Picture the ocean millions of years ago. A massive whale swims slowly near the surface, unaware of what lurks below. From the depths, a shadow rises. There's no sudden rush, no flailing, just a smooth, powerful glide. Then, in an instant, jaws open wider than a car. Rows of sharp, gleaming teeth close around the whale's midsection with a thunderous snap. Water churns. The whale thrashes once, twice, and then the struggle fades. The shark releases its grip, circles, and returns for another bite. In a few short minutes, a creature weighing many tons becomes a meal. That's the power of Megalodon's teeth and jaws in action. Even after extinction, these teeth continue to hold a strange kind of power. Divers and fossil hunters still search for them, pulling them from riverbeds and ancient sediment layers like hidden treasures. Some are perfectly preserved, their serrations still sharp after millions of years. Holding one feels almost like holding time itself, a direct, physical link to a world that no longer exists. The sheer abundance of these fossils also gives us clues about how successful Megalodon was as a species. Sharks shed thousands of teeth in their lifetime, but the fact that so many Megalodon teeth are found across the globe hints at just how widespread and numerous they must have been. They weren't rare, elusive creatures. They were everywhere, ruling warm oceans with unmatched authority. When you think about it, teeth are both simple and profound. They're small compared to the creature itself, yet they tell almost the entire story. Through them, we understand Megalodon's hunting strategies, its diet, its size, its global range, and even its evolutionary success. They are, quite literally, the sharpest clues we have about this prehistoric giant. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine drifting through ancient waters. The sunlight filters down in shimmering beams. The sea is calm, but beneath you, something stirs. You catch a glimpse of something white and triangular, a single tooth, larger than your hand, glinting in the light as it sinks slowly toward the sea floor. It's a reminder that somewhere down there, hidden in the deep, jaws once opened wide enough to swallow dreams whole. For millions of years, the Megalodon ruled the oceans without challenge. It was the ultimate predator in a world rich with life. Warm seas, thriving whale populations, and vast open waters created the perfect stage for its reign. Unlike many predators that have to constantly look over their shoulders for something bigger, Megalodon had no natural enemies. It swam where it wanted, hunted what it wanted, and shaped the entire marine ecosystem around its presence. Its time at the top was long, powerful, and awe-inspiring. Imagine the ocean during the Miocene and Pliocene epochs. There are no ships, no human presence, no noise except the natural rhythm of the sea. Giant whales migrate in huge numbers, gliding through the warm currents. Pods of early dolphins play near the surface. Seabirds dive for fish. In this vibrant, living world, the shadow of a giant moves silently beneath. Wherever the Megalodon swims, the ocean seems to change. Its presence alone causes smaller predators to scatter. Whales alter their paths. Fish schools shift direction. It doesn't need to rush or fight constantly to prove itself. Its sheer size and reputation are enough. This dominance wasn't just about brute strength. Megalodon occupied a unique ecological niche. It fed on whales and other large marine mammals, creatures that very few predators could even attempt to tackle. By keeping whale populations in check, it indirectly influenced everything else. Healthy whale populations supported scavengers, sharks, and seabirds when carcasses sank to the ocean floor, becoming whale falls that nourished deep-sea ecosystems. Megalodon's hunting contributed to this cycle, making it an invisible architect of the prehistoric marine food web. It also believed that megalodons may have played a role in the evolutionary arms race between predators and prey. As they hunted whales, whales may have adapted behaviors to avoid them, perhaps traveling in larger pods, migrating differently, or evolving faster swimming speeds. Some species of whales became more agile, others grew larger, all in a natural game of survival against the world's greatest shark. In a way, Megalodon helped shape the creatures that would one day outlast it. Their reign extended across the entire globe. From the coastlines of ancient North America to the shores of Africa, Europe, and Asia, Megalodon was there. Its teeth have been found in sediments that were once part of tropical shallow seas and deep ocean basins alike. It was not a regional predator. It was a global phenomenon. Its adaptability allowed it to thrive wherever warm waters and prey existed. Juveniles dominated the coastal nurseries, while adults patrolled the open seas like living warships, each capable of traveling vast distances in search of food. What's fascinating is that despite their enormous size and power, megalodons weren't mindless killing machines. Like most predators, they likely spent much of their time simply swimming, traveling, and searching. Hunting was energy-intensive, and even for a creature this large, energy efficiency was crucial. When a whale was found, the attack was decisive and devastating. But between those hunts, the ocean must have been filled with long, quiet periods of movement. If you could watch one from a safe distance, you might see a giant shark gliding effortlessly for hours, its movements smooth and unhurried like a drifting shadow. The dominance of Megalodon also gave it a kind of mythical quality in its own time. Not to humans, of course, because we didn't exist yet, but within the balance of nature. Other species evolved and lived in response to its presence. Entire migration patterns were influenced by where megalodons were likely to be. Its reign was not just about physical encounters but about the ripple effects of its existence. Even when it wasn't actively hunting, its influence was felt in the way creatures behaved, moved, and survived. It's also worth noting how long this reign lasted. Megalodon existed for millions of years, far longer than humans have so far. During this time, climates changed, continents shifted, and species evolved. But the giant shark remained, adapting to its environment with quiet mastery. Its success wasn't a brief flash. It was a long, stable dominance that shaped the oceans for entire geological ages. Picture a vast, prehistoric bay. Whales gather in the warm shallows to give birth. Fish scatter in glittering clouds. In the deeper water just beyond, a massive shape lingers. It doesn't need to attack right away. It waits, sensing, watching. The whales are unaware of how ancient this rhythm is, how many generations before them have faced the same silent hunter. When the moment comes, the giant moves forward with slow precision. The water shifts, a shadow passes beneath, and the cycle of life and death plays out once again, as it has for millions of years. It's humbling to think that long before any human civilization, before pyramids or cities or even language, this creature reigned over the oceans. Its presence was as natural and unquestioned as the tides, and for a time, nothing challenged it. Not another predator, not the environment, nothing. It was the undisputed ruler of a vast, living world beneath the waves. But, like all reigns, this one would eventually come to an end. Climate would shift, prey would migrate, and the balance that had lasted for ages would begin to tilt. For now, though, in this part of the story, the megalodon is still supreme. It glides through warm waters with quiet power, unaware that its age of dominance will not last forever. The ocean belongs to it, and everything within seems to know it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine floating on the surface of that ancient sea. The air is warm, the water calm. Beneath you, unseen but not unfelt, a massive shape passes by, so large and silent that it feels like the sea itself is moving. That is what it meant to live during the reign of a giant. The reign of the megalodon was long and powerful, but even the mightiest creatures can't escape the slow, unstoppable forces of nature. After millions of years of warm oceans and plentiful prey, the world began to change. It didn't happen overnight. There was no sudden disaster that wiped the giant sharks out in a single moment. Instead, the end of their age came gradually, through shifting climates, cooling oceans, and changing ecosystems that slowly but steadily reshaped the world they once ruled. Around 3 to 4 million years ago, Earth began entering a period of global cooling. Ocean temperatures dropped as ice sheets expanded at the poles. These changes affected currents, coastlines, and the distribution of warm water that Megalodon depended on. Remember, this giant shark thrived in warm tropical and subtropical waters. Its physiology likely wasn't suited for cold environments, and while it could regulate its body temperature to some degree, there were limits. As the oceans cooled, the warm habitats it relied on began to shrink, pushing the species into smaller and smaller regions where conditions remained suitable. At the same time, the continents themselves were shifting. The formation of the Isthmus of Panama, when North and South America became connected, had a dramatic impact on ocean currents. It separated the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, altering the flow of warm and cold water. This change affected marine life on a global scale. Ocean circulation patterns became more complex, and some of the warm corridors Megalodon used to travel between hunting grounds were cut off. The once open and interconnected seas became more fragmented, making it harder for the sharks to follow prey as easily as before. And prey itself was changing. Whales, which had been the Megalodon's main food source, began adapting to the cooler climate. Many species started migrating to colder regions near the poles, where the giant shark couldn't easily follow. Some whales became faster and more agile, evolving new traits that helped them evade predators. Others shifted their breeding and feeding grounds, traveling along routes that bypassed the warmer waters where megalodons hunted. This meant that even though the sharks were still formidable, their prey was literally slipping away to places they couldn't reach. Imagine a giant megalodon gliding through waters that were once teeming with whales. It swims for days, then weeks, following currents that used to lead to reliable feeding grounds. But when it arrives, the ocean is quieter. The pods of whales it once hunted have moved north, following rich blooms of plankton and krill in colder waters. The warm seas feel emptier, quieter. The shark keeps searching, but the prey it depended on has changed its habits. Slowly, food becomes harder to find. You can almost sense how frustrating this must have been for a creature that once sat confidently at the top of the food chain. Its instincts, perfectly honed for millions of years, were now guiding it toward places that no longer offered what they once did. It wasn't Ewenty that Megalodon suddenly became weak or incapable. It was that the world around it was changing in ways it couldn't control. Juvenile megalodons were also affected. Warmer coastal nursery grounds began to shrink as sea levels fell. Shallow seas receded, exposing land that had once been underwater. The protected areas where young sharks grew up became fewer, smaller, or disappeared altogether. This meant fewer safe places for young megalodons to survive their early years. Without strong nursery grounds, fewer juveniles could grow to adulthood, and the population slowly began to decline. At the same time, new competitors were emerging. Orcas, ancestors of modern killer whales, were evolving and spreading. These intelligent social predators hunted in groups and were well adapted to cooler waters. While they weren't nearly as large as Megalodon, their cooperative hunting strategies gave them an advantage in certain environments, especially near the coasts where prey gathered. It's possible that in some regions, orcas may have competed with young or smaller megalodons for food, adding pressure to a species that was already struggling to adapt. Think of it like a long, slow shift rather than a dramatic fall. For millions of years, Megalodon thrived because the world fit its needs perfectly. Warm oceans, abundant whales, and wide-open seas gave it everything it required. But as the climate cooled and the seas changed, that perfect balance began to unravel piece by piece. Prey moved away. Nursery grounds shrank. Competitors evolved. Water temperatures dropped. Each of these changes on their own might not have been catastrophic, but together, over time, they formed a wave of pressure that the species could not withstand forever. Picture a coastline during this transitional period. The air is cooler, the sea currents different. In the distance, a massive shark moves slowly through water that is not quite as warm as it once was. It's still powerful, still enormous, but its world is shrinking. The whales it once hunted now pass far to the north, following the cold. The nursery bays are shallower, narrower. The great hunter is still here, but the stage it ruled is changing under its fins. This cooling trend set the stage for the ice ages that would come later. And as the planet shifted toward this new climate, the Megalodon's golden era drew closer to its end. It wasn't a dramatic extinction in a single day or year. It was a quiet, gradual disappearance as the giants of the ocean found themselves out of place in a changing world. It's a strangely poetic image, isn't it? The most powerful shark in history, brought down not by a rival, not by sudden catastrophe, but by the slow hand of time and climate. No predator lasted forever, not even the king of the seas. The end of Megalodon's reign wasn't a single dramatic event. There was no day when the ocean suddenly fell silent, no moment when the last giant shark crashed to the seafloor in defeat. Instead, its extinction was like a slow fading of a once powerful sound. Over thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, the presence of Megalodon in the seas grew weaker, rarer, until finally it was gone. This quiet disappearance is almost more haunting than if it had been a sudden catastrophe. For a creature so immense, its end came not with a roar, but with a whisper. Imagine the world 3 million years ago. The seas that had once been warm and full of prey were cooling. Whales, the lifeblood of Megalodon's diet, were shifting to colder waters near the poles. These new feeding grounds were rich with food, but too cold for the shark to follow comfortably. Even with its partially warm-blooded abilities, there were limits to how far north or south it could go. The whales thrived in these new places, while the shark that had once hunted them was left behind in quieter, emptier waters. At the same time, the geography of the oceans was changing. The Isthmus of Panama had risen, dividing the Atlantic and Pacific and altering global ocean currents. With new patterns of circulation came new ecosystems. For a predator that relied on vast hunting ranges and interconnected seas, this was a serious problem. Routes that once connected migration paths were gone. Warm waters grew cooler, shallow seas receded, and nursery grounds for young megalodons dwindled. The very landscapes of their lives were shrinking. And then there were the competitors. Smaller predators, like early orcas and other toothed whales, were beginning to rise. Unlike Megalodon, these creatures were highly adaptable to colder waters and worked in groups, using cooperation to hunt more effectively. While a single orca was no match for a Megalodon, together they could outmaneuver many prey species, carving out hunting niches that the giant shark could no longer dominate. It was not a direct battle of strength, but rather a quiet takeover, as new predators filled the roles that Megalodon once controlled. Population numbers likely fell first in certain regions. A coastline that once echoed with the presence of megalodons might suddenly feel quieter. Fewer teeth would fall into the sand. Fewer shadows would glide beneath the waves. Over time, the decline spread across the globe. With fewer young surviving to adulthood and adults struggling to find enough food, each generation grew smaller than the one before. Eventually, sightings, if anyone had been there to see them, would have become rare, then exceptional, until there were none at all. It is fascinating to think about how gradual this disappearance must have been. There was no sudden meteor like the one that ended the dinosaurs. No volcanic eruption that darkened the skies overnight. Instead, the end of Megalodon was written slowly, by ice and currents, by shifting continents and migrating whales. It was the kind of extinction that is easy to overlook, happening not in a single moment, but in countless small changes spread across vast stretches of time. Picture one of the last megalodons, perhaps an older female, gliding through a warm coastal bay. She has survived for decades, seen countless hunts, and grown massive and strong. But now the bay is quieter. The whales that once gathered here in great numbers are gone. She swims out to deeper waters, following instincts that once guided her to rich hunting grounds. But the journey is long, and the reward is thin. Days pass, then weeks. A meal finally comes, but it is smaller than the feasts of her youth. She eats, rests, and continues on, but the world feels emptier. Somewhere in another part of the ocean, another giant searches, facing the same struggle. Slowly, their kind dwindles, not because of one fatal blow, but because the world itself has changed beyond their ability to adapt. And so the Megalodon slipped out of history. No fossils mark the exact last one. No single tooth tells us when the final giant swam. All we know is that by around 3.6 million years ago, the giant shark that once ruled the seas was gone. Its disappearance left an empty throne in the ocean, a space that new predators would eventually fill, but none would ever reach the same sheer scale or carry the same legend. It is strange to think about how quiet that ending must have been. For millions of years, the ocean had felt the weight of Megalodon's presence. Whales had altered their behavior in response. Ecosystems had bent around its hunts, and then, slowly, all of that pressure lifted. The seas adjusted. Whales spread more freely. Orcas and other predators rose in its place. Life went on, as it always does, but the age of giants had ended. Today, when we hold a Megalodon tooth in our hands, we are not just holding a fossil. We are holding the trace of a story that lasted for millions of years and ended quietly, almost invisibly, in the turning of the planet's climate. It is both humbling and haunting. Even the most powerful predator the Earth has ever seen could not outlast change. So the slow disappearance of Megalodon is a reminder of the fragile balance between life and environment. Size, strength, and power can dominate for ages, but when the world shifts, even the greatest must yield. Perhaps that is why the legend of the Megalodon still captures us today. Not just because it was massive and terrifying, but because its end was so unexpected, so quiet. A ruler that ruled until the sea itself changed the rules. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing on the shore of that ancient ocean. The waves roll in softly, the breeze carries the smell of salt, and the water sparkles under the sun. Somewhere beyond the horizon, perhaps the last of the giants still swims, unaware that its kind is fading forever. The ocean looks the same, but it is about to enter a new age. And the Megalodon, once its greatest hunter, is slowly vanishing into memory. It is a question that lingers in almost every curious mind when they first hear about Megalodon. Did humans ever see one? The idea is tempting. We picture ancient fishermen staring wide-eyed as a massive fin breaks the surface, or early coastal villages whispering about a shadow longer than their boats sliding through the water. But to answer this, we need to look closely at timelines, fossils, and the slow rhythm of history itself. Megalodon disappeared around 3.6 million years ago. That's long before humans existed. Even our earliest hominin ancestors were just beginning to walk upright in Africa, still far from becoming the storytellers and sailors we know today. Homo sapiens, our species, wouldn't appear until roughly 300,000 years ago, a gap of more than 3 million years between the last Megalodon and the first humans. By the time people began exploring the oceans, the giant sharks had already been gone for an almost unimaginable stretch of time. But here's where it gets interesting. The ocean is vast, and it keeps its secrets well. There are countless myths from seafaring cultures around the world. Tales of enormous sea creatures with jaws big enough to swallow ships, fins like mountains, and eyes like lanterns in the dark. None of these legends are literal encounters with Megalodon, but they do show how the deep ocean has always stirred both wonder and fear in the human imagination. Long after the real animal was gone, its shadow may have lived on through fossils and the occasional discovery of enormous teeth washed up on ancient shores. Imagine a small coastal community thousands of years ago. A child runs down to the beach after a storm and finds something strange buried in the sand. A massive triangular tooth, smooth and heavy, as big as their hand. It doesn't match any creature they've ever seen. The fishermen speak of sharks, but no shark they know has teeth like this. Over time, these mysterious teeth become objects of curiosity, perhaps even of reverence. Some are passed down through generations as talismans. Others are carved into ornaments or used in rituals. Without modern science, people would naturally weave stories to explain these relics, and so legends of giant sea beasts might grow. In fact, this isn't far from what actually happened. For centuries, Megalodon teeth have been found on land, far from the modern ocean. In medieval Europe, these fossils were called tongue stones, because people believed they were petrified tongues of dragons or serpents. It wasn't until the 17th century that scientists began to suspect these stones were actually ancient shark teeth. Even then, no one imagined just how massive the creature behind them had been. It would take more fossil discoveries and centuries of research to piece the story together. There are also myths from Polynesia, South America, and parts of Asia that describe sea monsters with enormous mouths and crushing bites. Some legends speak of creatures that attacked canoes or swallowed entire whales. Of course, these are not direct accounts of Megalodon encounters. They are stories, cultural echoes of the timeless human fear of the unknown waters. But it's fascinating to think how a single fossil or a single strange object washed ashore could inspire generations of storytelling. Even in the modern era, there are occasional claims of Megalodon sightings. Fishermen report shadows larger than their boats or bite marks on whales that seem too big to be made by any living shark. These stories often spread quickly, stirring imaginations and making headlines. But scientists have investigated many of these claims, and none have provided real evidence that the giant shark is still around. In fact, if an animal that large existed today, the oceans would show signs of it. Whale populations would behave differently. Modern sonar would likely detect them, and there would be far more evidence of their presence in deep-sea environments. Still, the idea refuses to fade. Part of the reason is that the ocean is one of the few places on Earth where a creature of that size could, in theory, hide for a long time. Vast, dark, unexplored regions exist at depths humans rarely reach. Every year, scientists discover new species in these waters. It's easy to let the imagination drift into those dark places and wonder, what if? But when we return to the facts, the timeline tells a clear story. Megalodon ruled the oceans long before humans existed, and by the time our ancestors began crafting tools and exploring coastlines, the great shark had already vanished. If humans ever saw a Megalodon, it wasn't the real creature. It was through the fossils they found and the stories they created to explain them. There's something poetic about that. The Megalodon might need to share the ocean with humans to leave a mark on our collective imagination. Its teeth and bones became the seeds of myths, inspiring awe and fear centuries after its extinction. In a way, humans and Megalodon met not in reality, but in memory, through the language of stories passed down by generations who looked at the sea and wondered what once swam beneath the waves. Picture a sailor in the 15th century, standing at the bow of a wooden ship at night. The stars are bright, the sea is endless, and the creak of the hull echoes in the stillness. He's heard the tales of sea monsters. He knows of strange stones pulled from cliffs, shaped like teeth from a creature too big to name. As the dark water ripples beneath him, his mind drifts to the possibility that something enormous might rise from the depths. He doesn't know it, but his imagination is reaching back millions of years, touching the ghost of a creature that once ruled the ocean. So, no, humans never saw a living Megalodon. But in another sense, we've been seeing it for centuries, through fossils, stories, and the quiet pull of the ocean's mysteries. The legend of Megalodon lives not in sightings, but in the human desire to understand what came before us. The giant shark is gone, but its shadow stretches across time, reaching us in whispers carried by waves and in the weight of ancient teeth held in our hands. Even though the Megalodon has been gone for millions of years, its presence still lingers, like an echo that never fully fades. The ocean may no longer feel the weight of its massive body cutting through the water, but in a quiet way, traces of its reign are still around us. You can feel it when you hold one of its fossilized teeth heavy and cool in your hand. You can sense it when you look at the vast, dark ocean and imagine what once swam beneath the surface. The Megalodon may have vanished, but its story is written into the very bones of the Earth. When paleontologists unearth Megalodon teeth, they often find them scattered in ancient seabeds that are now dry land. Each tooth is like a piece of a puzzle that stretches across millions of years. Some are perfectly preserved, their serrated edges still sharp, as if waiting for the next hunt. Others are worn smooth by sand and time, like whispers of a creature that once ruled the sea. These fossils are not just evidence of an animal, they are echoes of a world that no longer exists. Think about how the ocean would have sounded when Megalodon swam through it. The splash of its tail might have carried for miles underwater. Whales would have scattered at the faintest sign of its approach. Its presence would have shaped entire ecosystems, influencing migration routes and behaviors. When it disappeared, the balance of the ocean shifted. Whales flourished, new predators rose, and the sea entered a new era. But the memory of that ancient power seems to hum quietly beneath the surface, as if the ocean itself remembers. In a way, every discovery of a Megalodon fossil is a conversation between the past and the present. Scientists carefully clean, measure, and study these remains, piecing together the life of a creature no human ever saw alive. With each tooth, they can estimate size. With each layer of rock, they can understand when it swam. The more they learn, the more vivid the picture becomes. A portrait of a predator unlike anything alive today. It's almost like listening to a faint echo, slowly growing clearer with time. And beyond science, the Megalodon has carved its place in our cultural imagination. It appears in books, documentaries, movies, and countless stories. From the moment people first found its teeth centuries ago, they felt something extraordinary. Even today, when someone first learns about Megalodon, there's often a spark of awe. The sheer scale of it, the idea of a shark bigger than a bus with jaws strong enough to crush whales, stirs something deep inside us. It's a reminder of how wild and powerful nature can be. There's also a quiet beauty in the way this story unfolds. Megalodon lived, thrived, and disappeared long before we came along. Yet, somehow, its existence still reaches us, carried through time by stone, water, and imagination. Its legacy isn't just in the fossils buried underground, it's in the way we, as humans, respond to that legacy, with curiosity, wonder, and a touch of fear. The creature itself may be gone, but the echo it left behind continues to travel across generations. Picture yourself standing on a beach at night. The sky is filled with stars, and the waves roll in softly, one after another. You look out at the dark horizon and imagine that millions of years ago, somewhere out there, a massive shape moved through the water. It didn't know you. It didn't need to. It lived in its own world, in its own time. And yet, here you are, thinking about it. That's the power of echoes. They connect moments that are separated by vast distances and unimaginable stretches of time. The story of Megalodon is ultimately a story of impermanence and endurance. The creature itself is gone, but its impact endures. It shows us that even the mightiest beings can fade, but the traces they leave can echo long after. It teaches us about the ever-changing Earth, about how climate, geography, and life are intertwined in delicate, powerful ways. It invites us to imagine worlds beyond our own time and to find wonder in the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of the sea. As we close this journey, let your mind drift like a slow current through the ancient oceans. Imagine the sunlight filtering down through blue waters, the vast schools of whales, and the sudden, graceful shadow of a giant passing beneath. For millions of years, that shadow was real, and it ruled the seas. Now, it exists only in stories, in fossils, and in our imaginations. But that is enough. The echo of the Megalodon still hums quietly, and if you listen closely, you might just hear it. And so, our journey through the ancient oceans comes to a quiet end. We've followed the Megalodon from its mysterious beginnings, through its rise as the ocean's greatest hunter, and finally to its silent disappearance. For millions of years, this giant shaped the seas, yet in the end, even it was humbled by time and change. But its story didn't vanish. It lives on in fossils buried in the earth, in legends told by sailors, and in the imagination of everyone who ever stared into the dark ocean and wondered what might be beneath. The Megalodon may be gone, but its echo still drifts softly through time. Thank you for joining me on this quiet journey through history. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more mysteries from the past, told slowly and gently, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. That way, you won't miss the next adventure. For now, close your eyes, let the sound of the ocean carry you, and drift into a peaceful sleep. Good night, and may the deep stay calm.